1. And you're live, Chairman.
Thank you, Berna. Good evening and welcome to this South East Area Planning Committee meeting on Wednesday, the 14th of April, 2021. My name is Councillor Nick Skeens and I'm the chair for this committee. Before we commence the business of the meeting, can I ask all in attendance to observe a minute's silence to mark the passing of His Royal Highness, the Duke of Edinburgh. Thank you, everybody. You may hear from time to time in the background the horns of the Wednesday night racing starting in Burnham. I hope it doesn't disturb anybody. Members, this meeting is held under new regulations which came into effect on the 4th of April 2020 in response to the COVID-19 situation. Please can I ask everyone present in this meeting to ensure that your camera remains on where broadband permits and your microphone remains muted when not addressing the committee. This will reduce background noises and avoid any unintentional disturbances. We are streaming this meeting live as well as recording, and by being present in the meeting, you are giving your consent to being recorded. Members and officers, during each item, please use the hands up function of the meeting to indicate if you wish to speak. You are reminded that apart from indicating points of order, or that you have to leave the meeting, the chat function should not be used for questions or any other purpose. When speaking and referring to agenda papers, please ensure you reference a page or paragraph number and keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. And when invited to speak, please ensure you turn on your microphone. It is, of course, so easy to forget. Now, if I may ask officers taking part in the meeting to introduce themselves, starting with Hannah Dungate.
Good evening, councillors. Hannah Dungate, Planning Specialist in Development Management. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Lee.
Good evening, members. I'm Matt Lee, Lead Specialist Place and Chief Planning Officer here at Malden District Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Johnson.
Good evening, Chair, members. My name is Michael Johnson, Lead Specialist Development Management. Thank you.
And Bernard Casey.
Good evening, members. Bernard Casey, clerk to this evening's committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other officers present?
No, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Well, before I call on the clerk to take the roll call of the committee members, can I ask those councillors in attendance, i.e. not members of the committee, to introduce themselves, please?
Please let the record show that Councillor Morris is lurking.
Thank you very much, Councillor Morris. Bernard, please, can you now carry out a roll call of members to confirm who's in attendance?
Thank you, Chairman. Members, I will call your names in alphabetical order. Please indicate that you're in attendance, starting with Councillor Bassinger.
Good evening, and I'm present. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beale. Councillor Beale. Councillor Bell.
I'm present. Good evening, everybody.
Thank you. Councillor Channa.
Good evening, everybody. I'm present. Thank you.
Councillor Helm.
Present, Bernard. Good evening, everybody.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
Present, Bernard. Good evening, everybody, as well.
Thank you. Councillor Skeens.
Yes, I'm definitely here.
Thank you. Councillor Stamp.
Present Burner, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Bernard, please, members, be advised that we have 2 public participants in the meeting this evening. I will call on them to speak at the appropriate time. Please note that these people are going to be in the meeting and their microphones and cameras will be off until decisions are made on their particular agenda items. Apologies for absence. May I have any apologies for absence, please, Bernard?
Yes, Chairman, we've received apologies for absence from Councillors Dewick and Boyce. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Item 3, minutes from the 17th of March 2021. It's recommended that the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of March 2021, found on pages 7 to 20, are approved as a true and accurate record. I so move. If you wish to second that motion, could you unmute?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Helm. If any member wishes to raise any matter of accuracy, please use the hands up function to indicate, and I will invite you to speak. Okay, I can't see any hands up, so I guess, Bernard, you can't see anybody either?
No, Chairman.
Okay, so are we happy to agree this by assent, members?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, we've agreed that by assent. Thank you very much. Now on to declarations of interest, item 4. To disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other pecuniary interests or non-pecuniary interests relating to items of business on the agenda, having regards to paragraphs 6 to 8, inclusive of the Code of Conduct to members. Members are reminded that they are also required to disclose any such interests as soon as they become aware, should the need arise throughout the meeting. So if any member has an interest to declare, please use the hands up function to indicate this, and I'll invite you to speak. I'm going to start. In item 5, I need to declare an interest, which I believe is non-pecuniary, but insofar as someone connected to the applicants has recently provided assistance to a local charity of which I am a trustee. So it could be, in the public mind, seen as a motivation for me to look favourably upon that application. To avoid any possibility of doubt, I'm not going to take part in the debate and I'm not going to vote. And when it comes to the item, I'm going to hand over the chair to the Vice Chair, Councillor Bell, in case a split vote requires a casting vote. So that's me declaring my interest on item 5. Bernard, are there any other members indicating a wish to speak?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Channer.
Thank you. Councillor Channer.
Thank you, Chairman. My normal one, in that I must declare non-pecuniary interest. I'm also a member of Essex County Council, which of course is consulted on matters that is under its remit, such as highways, access, education, or anything like that, Chairman, that would normally be done through the planning application consultation stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Channer. Councillor Helm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 6, pecuniary interest in the applicant has repaired my washing machine several times and I feel I cannot take part. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are you planning to leave the meeting at that point?
Yes, I'll be leaving. As soon as they start, I'll be leaving.
Thank you very much.
Back.
Okay, we now go on to item 5, 21-00088/full Burnham Yacht Harbour, Foundry Lane, Burnham-on-Crouch. And it's at this point that I'm going to hand the meeting over to Councillor Vanessa Bell, and I will take no part in this item.
Thank you.
Could I ask if Councillor Channer and Councillor Helm could lower their hands? That's lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Skeens. So we move to agenda item 5, found on pages 21 to 34. Please note that a member's update in relation to this application has been circulated prior to the meeting. In a moment, I will call on the officer to present this item. Members, a reminder that if you wish to speak on this item, please make this known by using the hands up function within this meeting. I will then come to you in turn. Please keep your points clear and succinct. So, Ms Dungate, over to you. If you could present the report for us, please.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Chairman. I'll just share my screen. Okay, thank you. Planning permission is sought for the temporary stationing of a single mobile home for security staff accommodation at the Burnham Yacht Harbour for a period of 18 months. The applicant is seeking to regularise the siting of the mobile home, which is already stationed at the site and has been the subject of an enforcement investigation since June 2020. This application follows a previously refused application for 2 mobile homes at the site, also to be used for staff accommodation. And the previous application was refused on the basis that insufficient information had been received to justify the essential need for the workers' accommodation in this location, as well as the fact that the mobile homes are sited within the middle of the working storage yard at the Burnham Yacht Harbour, which would mean that no usable private amenity space could be provided at the site. As you've already mentioned, Chairman, a members' update has been circulated, which includes details of the additional public comments received. Here is the location plan for the site. The application site area, which is outlined in red, is the storage yard behind the existing Yacht Harbour buildings where the mobile homes are currently situated. The blue line indicates the extent of the Yacht Harbour, which is also in the applicant's ownership. And it should be noted that the application site is located outside of the defined settlement of Burnham-on-Crouch, so is within the countryside in planning policy terms. This is the block plan for the proposal, which shows the positioning of the mobile home on the northern edge of the site within the storage yard. And these are the elevations of the existing buildings at the site, not showing where the caravans are situated. These are the elevations showing the mobile home in situ at the site, which you can see here and here. And these are further elevations showing the caravan in situ at the site, mobile home, I should say. This is the floor plan of the mobile home, showing 2 bedrooms and living and kitchen areas with the potential to accommodate up to 6 people. This is a photograph taken from Foundry Lane, looking towards the car park and the Yacht Harbour in the distance. The application site is located just behind the trees on the right-hand side of the picture. And this is another photograph facing the application site taken from the car park. It also shows the track located at the rear of the site. This is a photograph taken from the track located at the rear of the site. And as you can see from this photograph, the mobile homes, as well as a number of storage containers and working machinery, are located in the storage yard. This is another photograph also taken from the track. This is a photo from Foundry Lane looking into the site, and as you can see through the trees, the mobile home is there. And this is a photograph of the existing buildings taken from the front of the harbour. To the side of the buildings, you can see the mobile homes located within the storage yard through the gap. And this is a photograph of the mobile homes taken by the applicant within the site. You'll note that there is a mobile home here covered in tarpaulin. That was included within the previous refused application, but it is no longer included within this application, and the applicant has advised that this is going to be removed on the 20th of April, so next week. And just for reference, this is an aerial photograph of the site, just to better show the location of the mobile homes within the storage yard. So to conclude, as explained in the committee report, the proposal has been assessed largely against policy H7 of the Malden Local Development Plan, which has been designed to assess essential workers accommodation in the countryside. As the proposal relates to temporary workers accommodation for a business outside of the defined settlement boundary, it is considered that this policy is relevant to the current proposal. Policy H7 states that permanent or temporary accommodation in the countryside where it relates to a rural business or enterprise will only be permitted when a number of criteria have been met. To summarise, the criteria include evidence to be submitted to the satisfaction of the council that there is a functional need for a full-time worker in this location, that there are no suitable alternative dwellings available in the area to serve the identified need, and the size of the structure is commensurate with the needs of the enterprise concerned. The development should also be designed to minimise the adverse impact upon the character and appearance of the area. As noted in section 5.1 of the committee report, and in particular paragraphs 5.1.8 to 5.1.14, due to the evidence submitted, it is not considered that there is an essential need for a security staff member to reside on site, nor has it been demonstrated that the mobile home would be commensurate to the needs of the business concerned, given that it could accommodate up to 6 people. No evidence have been submitted to demonstrate that there are no other suitable alternative dwellings available in the wider area, and it is felt that the position of the mobile home would increase the amount of structures at the site, which would be inappropriate and harmful to the character and appearance of the area. Although it is acknowledged that the proposal would be on a temporary basis for 18 months, it is noted that no private amenity space would be provided for the occupiers of the mobile home, given that it's positioned in the middle of a working storage yard. And for these reasons, the application is recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chairman.
You should, Councillor Bell.
I do apologise, members, officers, members of the public. I was muted. So we do have one public participant for this planning application. In line with the public participation scheme, I now invite the applicant, Mr. Lingard, to read out his submission. May I remind you that you are allocated 2 minutes only for public speaking in accordance with the scheme, and please turn your camera and microphone off when finished speaking. Thank you. Mr. Lingard.
Hello, can you see me?
Yes, we can.
I can't, okay, fine. When does my 2 minutes start?
Bernard,
just now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Richard Lingard. I'm a director of Burnham Marina and have been for over 15 years. During my time in charge, we've had no problems in Morden District Council until the advent of the COVID epidemic. Explaining how Marina works in 2 minutes is very difficult, but here goes. The caravan in question was brought in during the first lockdown. The reasoning behind this is very simple. The Marina contains 350 leisure and commercial boats, is both a major employer and tourist attraction in Burnham, and is a very large piece of infrastructure. Within the marina are 2 RNLI lifeboats and 2 Crouch Authority boats that need access 24/7. We also have people staying on board their vessels because they are vulnerable and don't want to risk catching COVID from their families at home. And conversely, frontline workers staying on their boats whilst they work because they don't want to go home and risk infecting their parents or grandparents. Before COVID, we had harbour masters working from 9 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, and then staff in our Swallowtail restaurant from 5 to midnight, and then a third-party security firm from midnight to 8, all providing emergency cover and help if needed. The harbour masters are all aged between 60 and 75, and since the first lockdown, they will not come in if a third-party security firm has been sharing their facilities and harbour office overnight. And under COVID guidance, the Swallowtail restaurant has been closed. This means we only had cover from 9 to 5, not good if there is, for example, a hydraulic gate failure, a power cut, oil spill, or emergency services need a site layout to locate somebody. So we arranged for caravan and a member of staff to move in during the epidemic and to provide cover. This is absolutely a temporary application, and we would undertake to remove the caravan after 12 to 18 months and further agree it would just be for one person and they would have to be an employee of the marina. We know how to run a marina, as does the RNLI and the Crouch Harbour Authority, hence their support for this application. The Town Council have supported this, and I don't believe there are any objections, although that might change. We can't run a business like this by working from home. It's been a hard time, and even now only half our facilities are open. We would appreciate your support over what is a strange time, and I can't emphasise enough, this is just a temporary COVID measure. I'm sorry that was a bit quick, I had to put it into 2 minutes. Did you all hear that? Sorry.
No, thank you. There we go. Thank you.
Can I turn my camera off, or
Yes, please, Mr. Lingard, if you would.
I'm the speaker.
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, members, I now open the debate and invite you to put any questions or make any comments you have on the report. Bernard, has anyone indicated that they wish to speak? I can't see any hands.
No, Chairman, not at the moment.
Councillor Hull and then Councillor Helm. Councillor Hull, I'll come to you, and Councillor Stamp. So, Councillor Hull.
Oh, thank you very much. I do, having run a small business myself on the same idea, it is important that you have people there. So I'd be, if it's only temporary, in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hull. Councillor Helm.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Have we got any pictures of the actual yacht harbour and all the yachts that are in the harbour?
Ms Dungate, do we have?
No, I didn't actually take a picture of the harbour, although I can see it in my mind's eye. Apologies.
If I may carry on, Madam Chairman.
Please do, Councillor Helm. Thank you, Ms Dungate.
There have been millions of pounds worth of equipment and everything on these boats. It's ridiculous that they can't have a security person on site to protect this valuable asset or these valuable assets. We're saying it's outside defined boundaries and someone should have a house within the town or whatever. How can they monitor the site if they're living off the site? If the police get called, that'll be 20 minutes before they get there, and all the twos and blues will be going and all the thieves will be gone by the time they get there. So it's, in my mind, it's essential a security person on site on the time. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Helm. Councillor Stamp.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, members. I have great sympathy with the applicant. I think Councillor Helm has just made an excellent point. Actually, I should have declared an interest. Sorry, members, we do actually put a little boat in there. So I will declare an interest actually on there. Oh, crikey, yes, because it's not in the river at the moment, but we do actually have a boat in there. I don't think that's classed as pecuniary.
The decision is yours,
that's a good
as
one,
you
isn't
well
it?
know. So how do you wish to proceed on this?
Well, I think, oh goodness, I think because I do have a boat and I pay in there, it's classed as having a pecuniary interest. So I'm afraid I can't speak on it other than to say what I've said. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to bow out. I do apologise. My mistake, members, because I don't class it as my boat. It's my husband's. And yet again, we have the same thing. Because I'm married to him, I have to declare it. Anyway, thank you. I do apologise.
Thank you very much.
You have to leave the meeting, Councillor Stamp.
Yeah, I will.
Pecuniary, you have to leave.
I'm going to go. Hang on, I'm just going to put my hand down, Councillor.
I just saw you. Sorry, I just saw you sitting there, and I thought, you know, when you said, you know, I just wanted
Bernard will exclude me. Bernard will exclude me.
Councillor Stamp is not faster than the speed of light on the computer, so we'll just pause.
Bernard, me out.
Councillor Stamp leaves the meeting. Thank you very much, Bernard. Members, does anybody else wish to speak on this item?
Councillor Helm, you still have your hand up. Is that legacy? You're muted, Councillor Helm.
Madam Chairman, may I speak?
Yes,
I'd like
please
to
do.
propose that we go against the officer's recommendation and prove this.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Hull, are you seconding? You are muted, Councillor Hull.
Sorry, I'll second it.
Thank you, councillors.
We will need some reasons.
Sorry, Bernard, I can see Mr. Lee.
Yes, Mr. Lee, I'm sure is probably going to say the same thing as I'm going to say, I think. Or does he want to speak to this, sorry, before I mention about reasons for approval?
Well, obviously, yeah, normally I get an opportunity to come back after the debate to highlight any policy conflicts or anything. Is that okay, Chairman?
Yes, of course it is, Mr. Lee. Of course it is. Please go ahead.
Thank you, members. You know, as an authority, obviously, we are sympathetic to the need for businesses, but we do need to be conscious of our policies and also previous decisions that the council has made. The argument put forward in relation to a need for security, obviously, is something that is very common across the district, especially in such a rural area such as Malden, and it's something that generally, as an authority, we do resist unless there is specific evidence of a particular need. And that's both even been historically both temporary and permanent. And this is something that generally, I'm not going to say always because I might be wrong, but I can't remember in my 7 years I've been here of us losing an appeal. And I'm not sure if other members might remember. They've got, especially some of the members, have got better memories than I have for such matters. But it is something that generally you should be looking to provide other forms of security before allowing a permanent residential property. The other thing, obviously, in relation to this is somebody to stay there overnight. But as the applicants, I was about to say, I've been in a hearing all day. As the applicant stated, they actually have external third party that comes at night time to actually do the security or covers it. So the actual caravan occupation, although it's for accommodation, will actually be primarily required through the daytime. So obviously that's a slight juxtaposition with the reasoning of why there should be somebody on site permanently in a residential accommodation in the form of a caravan. And then the need for it, if you see what I mean, members, that actually this protection, this security that the applicant's requiring isn't for unsociable hours. This is actually for sociable hours, and therefore that adds to the conflict with the policy. And my advice would be for members to the planning weight to be given, because there is an external company that delivers the security and has done for years successfully, from what we gather from what the applicant said before this. So I would be conscious that the applicant's really trying to solve an issue in the daytime, and I'm not convinced professionally, in my advice be that a permanent somebody there 24 hours is the way to solve an issue in the daytime when such an approach is such in conflict with our policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Councillor Helm, before you come back, I'd just like to I'm sure I heard Mr. Lingard say that the people who are living on the marina have refused the third-party security company due to the COVID risk, and the harbour masters also have refused that. So I'm not seeing from what the applicant said. I'm not seeing it in the same light, Mr. Lee, as you in that respect. But thank you very much, Councillor Helm. If you'd like to. Sorry.
Is it okay to ask Ms. Dungate to double check the documents submitted, because what actually was or wasn't stated by and we'll hopefully be able to give you a definitive stance on that if Ms. Dungate can, while the debate's going on, if we just ask her to quickly look that up. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. That would be helpful. So, Councillor Helm, I am going to you next. I see, Mr. Lingard, you have your hand up, but I cannot allow you to come back, unfortunately, on that. So, apologies. Councillor Helm.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. It was pointed out by the applicant that the harbour masters wouldn't come on the site while you had outside security people coming on. And it was rather convenient to admit the whole of the harbour, the boats that sit in the harbour, to show why the security is needed. I think that's presented one-sided. So I'll still go with my recommendation, please.
Thank you, Councillor Helm. Councillor Bassinger, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would just like to say that obviously we're all aware that we are hopefully coming out of lockdown, and I think the argument for COVID is a little hard pushed, really. And so I think we should take heed that the case of the officers and not so quickly jump into this sort of COVID necessity, because you know that really is not the case, I don't think, anymore.
Without wishing to get into a debate about the whys and wherefores and whatevers of COVID and the lockdown, my view is that we are far from out of the woods yet, and precautionary measures should be taken. And could we not possibly condition that in some way, I'm wondering, so that if when we do reach full lockdown for longer than a period of a certain amount of time, then the caravan's removed? I'm not sure. I would rather we condition in that way, because I think it would be very premature to suggest that COVID is over at this point. Councillor Bassinger, you'd like to come back?
I would. I don't think we should be bringing COVID into a planning argument, really. I just don't see why we're doing that. You know, we are coming out of COVID, and to be honest, you know, as much as we all sort of are dragging our heels, we do need to come out. And so I don't see how we can really factor this in.
Thank you, Councillor Bassinger. Mr. Lee, you are ready to come back, please.
Thank you, Jim. Just in a point, directly in relation to the point you raised, it would be difficult for us, I think, to word a condition that would be robust, precise, enforceable, etc., that was flexible around government guidance in relation to COVID or anything, which is COVID, which I think as officers' reports certainly would agree with Councillor Bassinger in that it should be given a limited weight. But irrespective of that, if members did feel that there was a concern, I may be tempted to encourage members to look at giving a lesser time.
And caravan, which is not the subject of this application and is due to be removed, 2018. So that would suggest that a residential cutting, obviously we weren't made aware of that until 2020 last year, and we learnt that the second mobile home had arrived at the site, let me just clarify, on the 10th of April last year. So that's just what I wanted to add about that, if that's okay.
Thank you very much, Ms Dungate. Just before I go to you, Councillor Helm, just a couple of things. Firstly, my understanding is that we do have to look at the application that is before us and not look at what has happened in the past. Apologies if I'm...
Yes, I'll second it, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. So, members, I believe we do have a proposal on the table, which is to approve the application, but subject to 12 months rather than 18 months. Is that correct, Councillor Helm?
Correct, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. So, members, do we need to go to a vote on that, or can we agree by assent? I'm sensing perhaps a vote. Would we like to go to a vote, members?
Through you, Chairman, you need to have reason for approval before the there could be a vote anyway.
You. Apologies, Mr. Lee. So, Councillor Helm, I believe you have some reasons for approval.
I'm not sure whether the policies cover millions of pounds worth of equipment to protect, but that's what I want to protect, millions of pounds worth of equipment, boats and everything else.
Thank you. I mean, I do believe, again, I don't want to get myself in deep water, no pun intended, by revealing my knowledge of the local development plan, but river related employment uses, I believe its policies are 1.3 and 1.4. I may be wrong on that, but we do say that we will support river related employment, and but it's an important part of the community. It is an important asset to Burnham, the Yacht Harbour, and as Councillor Helm said, there are a lot of very expensive boats in there. So I think it does meet those policy requirements, would be my comment, Mr. Lee. I don't know if that's sufficient. Mr. Lee?
Sorry, Chairman, I was talking without unmuting. I'll turn my camera on. I obviously, as a reason for approval, obviously my ability to assist members is much less than it is with a reason for refusal. But and I do think Councillor Helm's wording was a little abrupt and lacking maybe some policy basis. But I think I can give some assistance if Councillor Helm agreed with that. What's saying is that taking into account the exceptional circumstances, there is an additional risk that wouldn't normally be in place, and that's a material consideration that's outweighing the conflict with the policy. I don't know if that's exactly what Councillor Helm was not saying. It's up to him obviously to agree with that or not, but roughly that'd be my interpretation of his statement.
Councillor Helm?
For once, Mr. Lee, I entirely agree with you. Well done.
Thank you. So I do believe we have a proposal on the table with the relevant planning reasons attached. So, Bernard, I think we go to the vote, do we now?
Yes, Chairman. So members, we're voting contrary to the officer's recommendation to approve the application for the reasons as outlined by Councillor Helm. Members, I will call you in alphabetical order, starting with Councillor Bassinger. Can you please state clearly for, against, or abstain?
Against.
Councillor Bell?
For.
Councillor Channa?
Regrettably, against.
Councillor Helm?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Hall?
For.
Thank you. Thank you, members. That's everybody. That's 3 for the recommendation to approve, 2 against, and no abstentions.
Thank you very much. I shall unmute myself this time. So thank you, members and Bernard. So I hand back now to Councillor Skeens, please.
Thank you very much.
Can I just, sorry, members, can I just call back in Councillor Stamp, please? And remove Councillor Helm?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Bernard, I've just logged on.
Oh, lovely. Thank you very much.
Because I kept jumping in and out, Bernard. So if you
no worries.
It's me joining and disappearing when you hadn't finished.
Okay, and I'm just going to remove Mr.
Chairman.
Yes. Oh no.
Yes. Go ahead.
I just realised we didn't do conditions.
Okay, well, I'll have to hand this back to Councillor Bell.
Apologies for that, Mr. Lee. So conditions.
Off the ones I would consider, obviously, as it's retrospective, we don't need time. We'd need plans. We would need. Sorry, I can see Councillor Stamp in the corner. The easiest thing might be just to delegate to officers.
Can we delegate to officers?
Yes.
Please, yes. We'll delegate to officers, Mr. Lee.
And with agreement with yourself, Chair. We'll confirm that. Great, that'd be the easiest.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Oh, what a kerfuffle. Back to you, Councillor Skeens.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bell. Bernard, you're saying something.
I'm just wondering, here's Councillor Stamp. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. We're ready to go.
Wonderful. Yes, it's all musical chairs here today. We're going on to item 6 now. That's 21/00101/full land adjacent Hipseys Cottage, the street Steeple. In a moment, I'm going to call on the officer to present this item. And members, I remind you about the putting your hands up and speaking succinctly. So, Ms. Dungate, could you please present the report?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Planning permission is sought for the construction of a new 2-bedroom dwelling house at the land adjacent to Hipseys Cottage, the street, which is within the defined settlement boundary of Steeple. Steeple is classified as a smaller village within the district, which has few or no services and facilities and limited or no access to public transport. As the council cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, the tilted balance is engaged and it is necessary to assess whether the proposed development is sustainable. Steeple is located in a remote position within the countryside, away from any nearby services or facilities, and is not considered to be easily accessible by foot or public transport. Although the property would contribute to the identified need for smaller houses within the district, the addition of one property within an unsustainable location would weigh against the proposal, which would have limited benefit in making up the current housing land supply shortfall. The application site is adjacent to Hipseys Cottage, which is a Grade 2 listed building, which forms part of a cluster of Grade 2 listed buildings on both sides of the street here. These properties have value as a group in the immediate vicinity of the application site, and it should be noted that the Conservation Officer has objected to the proposal on the basis that it would cause minor harm to the significance of the adjacent heritage asset, Hipseys Cottage. This is noted at paragraphs 5.3.12 to 5.3.14 of the committee report. Also located to the east of the application site are detached bungalows here, which are set back from the road and have parking areas to the front. These properties all sit within fairly medium-sized plots. Here is the existing block plan for the proposal. This plan shows the existing garage outbuilding within the plot, as well as the driveway and parking area associated with Hipseys Cottage, as well as the residential garden to the rear. Here is the proposed block plan. As you can see, the proposed house would be set back within the site in line with the existing bungalow east of the site. A shared driveway area would be located in front of the new house with a tandem parking arrangement serving both properties. As a result of the narrow plot size, the proposed property is considered to be a cramped and contrived form of development, which would appear to have been forced into a small wedge of amenity space in this location. As such, the proposal is considered to have a harmful impact on the character and appearance of the area, which is assessed in paragraphs 5.3.9 to 5.3.11 of the committee report. It should also be noted, as a result of this layout, that the Highways Authority have objected to the proposal, as there would not be the provision of a turning area as a result of the contrived form of development, as well as insufficient visibility splays due to the location of the proximity of the access to the neighbouring property here. This would lead to vehicles reversing with restricted visibility onto the busy carriageway of the street, to the detriment of the safety of all highway users. These are the existing elevations of this part of the street scene. And these are the proposed elevations showing the proposed property adjacent to Hipseys Cottage, as well as the neighbouring bungalow. When viewed in isolation, there are no objections to the design of the house, which would be similar in scale, form and materials to Hipseys Cottage. These are the existing side elevations of Hipseys Cottage in the context of the neighbouring bungalow, and although it is not shown here, the proposed property would be located roughly here in line with the existing bungalow. These are the proposed side elevations of the cottage, and as you can see, they don't show the property in relation to the neighbouring properties. This is the proposed ground floor plan of the new house, which better shows the setback location of the property. And these are the proposed first floor plans showing 2 bedrooms at first floor level. There are also no side windows serving the first floor. This photograph is taken from the street looking east towards Hipseys Cottage, which is here, and the application site, which is next to Hipseys Cottage, and all of these properties are listed. This is a photograph of the application site. At the point where the new house is proposed, there is a noticeable change in character within the street scene, from a small cluster of taller historic buildings fronting the main road here, to contemporary bungalows which are lower in height and are set back from the main road here. This is a better photograph showing the adjacent bungalow. This photograph shows a long-range view towards the application site from the street. As previously discussed, given the surrounding context and the proposed positioning of the property towards the rear of the site, at this location within the street scene, it is considered to appear out of character with the surrounding area. This would be exacerbated by the setback positioning of the neighbouring bungalows, meaning that the proposed property would appear as a prominent feature within the street scene here. As the application, for the reasons above, the application is recommended for refusal due to the fact that the proposed development would be disconnected and isolated from services and facilities by reason of its unsustainable location, and would provide poor quality and limited access to public transportation, resulting in an increased need of private vehicle ownership. The proposed development, due to its layout and design, is also considered to be a contrived form of development which would result in significant harm to the character and appearance of the area, as well as the neighbouring listed building, Hipseys Cottage. Additionally, the development would detrimentally impact on highway safety due to the lack of a turning area for both properties as a result of the contrived nature of the development, as well as the tandem parking arrangement. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Dungate. Now we have a public participant, the agent, Mr. Lonergan, who's going to speak on this planning application. Mr. Lonergan, can I remind you that you have 2 minutes and 2 minutes only. This is for public speaking in accordance with the scheme. And please see you have your camera on, your microphone is on now too. Can you turn them both off when you finish speaking? And if you would like now to go ahead, and we'll time you 2 minutes.
Good evening. The applicants have lived in the village in Hipseys Cottage for over 20 years and want to retire to the village. There is a district-wide shortage of two-bedroom dwellings, and although for their own use, the two-bed cottage proposed does provide such accommodation. Hence this application for a smaller, more easily maintained and adapted house of a similar scale, appearance and materials to the listed dwelling they currently live in. I'd note that there are no objections from neighbours and the parish council support the application. The officer's issue with the dwelling seems less to be about its appearance and more about its location on the plot. The conservation officer suggests it vies for attention with the listed cottage, but I see it differently. The current setting is a two-storey attractive listed cottage with an crinkly tin, iron and concrete garage, and then the two-storey brick 20th century, the single-storey bungalows. It's an odd relationship. The proposed introduces an attractive transition between the timber-clad listed building and the bungalows. It improves the setting, in my opinion. The other major issue seems to be access for car parking. The applicants currently reverse into their yard through a narrow entrance with very poor visibility, as do many residents on this stretch of the street. So that's arrangements being maintained. It's not a new arrangement. But this arrangement's being improved because we're proposing to widen the access onto the street and improve visibility by reducing the hedgerow that's at the boundary, and therefore access is improved. On those two reasons, I think the application should be supported and approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lonergan. Just going to refer to somebody's telephone is ringing. If they could.
Oh, sorry, that was the bell. Thank you.
Oh, that was the bell. Sorry, of course. Very old-fashioned telephone I have in my mind there. But anyway, yes, Ms. Dungate, did I read something somewhere about highways objecting to this? Can you remind me why they did?
Yes, of course. I'll just find it in the report if I may. It's section 5.5 relates to access, parking and highway safety, where I discuss the highways objection. They've objected to the scheme on the basis that the first reason there isn't a turning area proposed, which would mean that the cars would have to egress the site, potentially reversing into the main road, and also because of insufficient visibility displays, because of the extension of the dropped curb and access to the site closer to Hipseys Cottage would mean that cars could potentially not see oncoming traffic, which would likely lead to increased conflict and risk of collisions for both emerging and approaching vehicles. Aside from that, or in addition to that, this is creating an additional dwelling at the site. So although there is an existing arrangement for the existing occupiers of Hipseys Cottage to egress and access the site, I'm not sure how long that arrangement has been in place, but this would worsen the situation because we now have the parking area for two properties, not just one, and the amount of vehicular movements would increase as a result of the tandem parking arrangement, and moving cars around within the site without a turning area.
Okay, thank you very much. So in short, there's a problem there already, as I think Mr. Lonergan suggested, and that may be exacerbated by a new property. Okay, I'm opening this up for general debate. I have seen that Councillor Bell has her hand up. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just take it down now. Yes, thank you, Ms. Dungate, for your report. There used to be a thing, now officers will be able to help me out with this, I'm sure, but there used to be a thing called backland development, and this was very much frowned upon. I don't know if it is still the case, but my concerns are mainly, well, highways. How rarely is it that highways actually consider something serious enough to object to? My experience is actually never. I think this is the first time I've heard that highways object to something, which suggests to me that it's a pretty serious issue. But secondly, with the parking, we have to consider this in perpetuity. Now, it may be that the current occupants, if they're going to occupy the cottage, have an arrangement to share this parking space and this access with the new occupants of Hipseys Cottage. However, that will not necessarily apply to future occupants. So we are creating a potential issue with the shared parking space. Now, I can't remember if that is a material planning consideration or not. Again, officers will be able to help me out on that. But for those reasons and for the objection of the conservation officer, I'm minded to support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lee, have you got anything to add to what Councillor Bell said just there?
Yep, happy to assist members as best I can, as always. The point about backland development is a fairly interesting one. It is something that's, I don't want to say frowned upon, but obviously when we're looking at applications, we're normally looking at things such as character of the area, urban grain, pattern development. So quite often what is backland development is unacceptable because it will conflict with that. Other times it might be that actually a piece of either the development could create its own quantum or it could face onto a street. So, and therefore it might be acceptable. You might have historic developments. To a certain extent, this wouldn't be backland development because it would still have a frontage to a street. So it wouldn't be the traditional form of backland development. What this would fall into is, if you consider it's acceptable to a certain extent, is infill development, where there would normally be some sort of gap, some sort of space where it's considered appropriate to put a property in, and that's called infill development. And on various matters, that can or can't be acceptable. And I think Ms. Dungate's report really covers that matter to a certain extent, acceptably, and highlights how the design of the property on its own per se isn't necessarily the conflict, it's the other issues that go with it, and that is where the problems come. In relation to the second query, my brain's gone blank and I can't remember what you asked.
It was about the access, the shared access and shared parking arrangements in future.
Yeah, and I think thanks for that, through your chairman. You're right. Planning has to look at the lifetime of the development, and obviously one of the conflicts and the concerns officers have in relation to this application is the town development, its relationship to creating a car parking space in front of a dwelling that wouldn't be separate. And as you said yourself, just because an applicant may have a relationship with somebody, whether it's, quite often it may, we're not saying this one per se, but quite often we hear applications whether it's for a relative or something like that, and we go, well, that'll be fine. Well, actually, members, we have to look at the lifetime of the development, and having such a relationship for car parking for two dwellings in front of one is not something that generally we would support because of the potential conflicts and disturbance and everything else. So that's why the reason for refusal around that deals with that matter. Thank
you very much indeed, Mr. Lee. Councillor Channer.
Thank you, Chairman. I found myself a bit confused with the report and I wanted to ring the officer, but I'm sorry I haven't been available today. It started off at the beginning of the report talking about to the north was undergrowth and what have you, and then it also said to the north also was a stretch of historic buildings. Regarding the historic buildings, did you mean to the west, really, of the site? Can I just ask that? Also, I do have some sympathies with this application. I will say that, because I know that it's been said it's an unsustainable location, and yes, LDP, I'm aware of what it says about Steeple. However, regarding the Sun and Anchor, when that was considered, I can tell you the report that went before the committee said that the majority of the site regarding the Sun and Anchor was just within the settlement boundary, and then quoted S1 and S8, and then mentioned about being a small village again, and went on about lack of public, the public transport and public services. However, nevertheless, the site would be regarded as being within a sustainable location. So therefore, this report is saying this is unsustainable location. I think we need to be clear regarding Steeple. Is it one or the other? I would like the letter or the consultation response from the conservation officer read out, because again, maybe it's my misinterpretation of the report. Looking at 5.3.13, and it was the last part, it says, it is the opinion of the Council's Specialist Heritage and Conservation Officer, I think the word's missing here, that due to the minor harm posed by the proposal, the development poses some conflict with this duty. And that duty is to give great weight to conservation issues as detailed within that paragraph. So I took it that the Conservation Officer saw there was minor harm to the listed building through this development, and I would like therefore the Conservation's officer's response read out, if I may, just to see if my brain's got it wrong or right. I think that might clear it out, because I didn't read it as objection. Regarding also the report, it does say that in isolation the design of the application dwelling is actually in isolation. There seems to be no issue with that. And also, I do appreciate the issue of perhaps the street scene, but there are some, it mentions crammed in, but if you look on the other side of the road, you'll see, or if you look actually at the block plan, you'll see quite a few what I would call crammed in sites. And bearing in mind what happened at South East regarding St. Lawrence, where I considered something was crammed in and everything, but recommended for approval. And I'm not having a go at the officers, but to me, that was crammed in. I'm just saying that I don't necessarily see this as crammed in. However, and I've probably forgotten a number of things I wanted to say, the big issue, and Councillor Bell's referred to it, and I have to say, when highways come up with something, I think we would be at our peril to ignore highways when they cannot support an application. Because if we were to override that, then I think, let's be frank, if anything was to happen in the future, I would not feel comfortable in that. So I take the highways objection as very, very sensible. But I would like some responses or some explanation regarding the sustainable site, bearing in mind the Sun and Anchor, how described, and then we get this. Also, I'd like to hear the conservation officer's objection, because I didn't read it in the merits of the report, I'm afraid, as objecting, and saw it as minor harm, which really caused the conflict with the duty of what the government says about protecting sort of conservation issues. So, but it's the highways area for me. I think being set back, there's the bungalow and everything. I didn't have a terrible angst about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You made your point very well. I'm going to go first to Matt Lee and then to Hannah Dungate, who I hope will talk to the conservation officers exactly what he meant. But first of all, to Matt Lee about highways. Oh, what was it? Highway? Sorry. Yeah, go ahead. You're muted, I'm afraid.
After a day of in a hearing, you thought I'd remember to get it right, but I kept getting it wrong in that as well, and I apologise, members. It's been a year now. Anyway, sorry about that. I think, yeah, I'll pass over to Ms Dungate in a moment to deal with a couple of more specific points. In relation to the sustainability one, I thought it was prevalent I stepped in, because it is a very interesting point that's been raised by Councillor Channer, and I think this might be the first time we've had it so far in a committee, whether it's South East or any of the others. And that comes to the fact that where we've lost the 5-year land supply, our settlement boundaries have actually gone. And therefore, dwellings that may have been policy compliant because they were within a settlement boundary are now falling foul of that, because we're only looking at whether or not they are sustainable. And referencing that, I think the Sun and Anchor is a classic example where I think it was allowed, or the officers dealt with it sometime last year, and we had a 5-year land supply. So as we had a settlement boundary, the council's position was any dwelling inside a settlement boundary or a proposed dwelling would automatically be sustainable, because we as an authority agreed the need for dwellings in the district, and we were allowing windfall within settlement boundaries. What has since happened is, because we no longer have a 5-year land supply, our policies around settlement boundaries no longer exist, and therefore each application for dwelling is assessed on its own merit through the tilted balance, which is sustainability in the MPPF. And I'm sure members that were here 3 years ago plus will remember the difficult conversations we've had similar to this about where, you know, applications were in places where there's already a large amount of settlement, and how comes previously or relatively recently we've allowed housing and now we're not. And that is the difference. And it is quite a complex position, because actually as an authority, as members, as decision makers, you could give the council's what is now an outdated policy some weight in the determination of an application and say the thrust that the council has historically taken is still has merit. But once officers are making a recommendation based solely on the tilted balance, we've come to the conclusion it's not sustainable. And I'm probably completely confused you, because I've tried to compress about a 20-minute discussion into about 2. So I apologise if I've confused you more than made it easy. But the point is basically we don't have a 5-year land supply anymore, and the settlement boundaries have disappeared.
Thank you. Can I now go on to Hannah Dungate, please, to talk on the conservation matter? You were going to clarify something for Councillor Channer.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just on the first point that Councillor Channer raised in terms of the north of the site or the north of the road, the north of the site being north of the rear boundary of the application site is undeveloped countryside. North of the building within the site is the existing undergrowth or residential garden, dense vegetation to Hipseys Cottage, and also north of the street is the application site. So hopefully the different norths clarify that.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful.
Yeah. Also, in terms of the conservation officer response, I don't know if you want me to read that out verbatim. Do you want me to read that out verbatim?
Is it going to take a long time? How long
is it?
Can I just say that, Hannah, if anything, you'd only need to concentrate in a truncated way on the last 2 paragraphs.
Oh,
yeah.
Is that Michael speaking?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say it's 4 paragraphs, but the 2 final paragraphs are the most pertinent to the application. If I just read those out, that will help clarify things.
That's fine. Go ahead.
This application seeks permission to construct a house in the garden of Hipseys Cottage, set back from the highway so that it aligns with the bungalows to the east. The proposed house would be similar in scale, form and materials to Hipseys Cottage. Being set back from the highway, the proposal would not obscure any important views of the listed building, but as the new house would be somewhat taller than the adjacent bungalows, it would be in an isolated, taller building in this position, noticeably changing the balance of built form and the visual emphasis towards the rear of the site, and to some extent vying for attention with the listed cottage. The existing front hedgerow and railings provide a pleasantly soft boundary treatment which complements the setting of Hipseys Cottage. The removal of most of the hedgerow and railings is required in order to create a parking area for 4 cars, serving both the existing cottage and the proposed house. This car-dominated frontage would be less sympathetic to the setting of the cottage than the current arrangement. In these ways, the development would detract from the setting of the listed building, causing some minor harm to its significance. To use the terminology of the MPPF and policy D3 of the Malden LDP, I advise that the proposal will cause less than substantial harm to the significance of the heritage asset. This harm must be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal. The degree of harm in this instance would be limited. Irrespective of the degree of harm, paragraph 193 of the NPPF requires local planning authorities to give great weight to the conservation of a heritage asset when considering a proposal. In accordance with section 66(1) of the Planning Act 1990, the council must have special regard to the desirability of preserving the listed building setting. Due to the minor harm posed by the proposal, the development poses some conflict with this duty. For the reasons I have outlined above, I object to the application. It will be down to the determining officer or committee to make a balanced judgment, weighing the harm I have identified against any public benefits the scheme poses.
Thank you very much indeed, Hannah. I think that's made it clear. I'm going to go to Councillor Hull now, who's had a hand up for quite some time, been very patient.
Oh, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, lovely. Having grown up in Steeple, I've been there, you know, I know quite a lot of, I've been there all my life. The residents of Steeple all are in favour of this, especially the parish council, and they feel that they don't get planning permission, and there's no new houses for young people or 2-bedroomed houses or anything that's passed in the village. They also, I do agree with the highways, and that is a very bad road. Is there any way they could change that so they could turn the car round or the cars round in the garage, in the area they have for parking?
Thank you very much, Councillor Hull. Can I ask Matt Lee that if the committee was minded to approve this, is there a condition or something we could do to mitigate the highways concerns, or would it require a new application?
Through you, Chairman. Ms Dungate, it's possible to call up the location plan?
Yes, bear with me.
While Ms Dungate's doing that, can I just expand on something Ms Dungate's, or when we talked about the consultation response? For clarity, the NPPF, when talking about heritage assets and the harm, only has 2 criteria, basically: substantial harm or brain's gone blank. Less than substantial harm. That's the only 2 thresholds. Sorry. So substantial harm is obviously something very significant, and any harm, anything that's not substantial, falls into the less than substantial harm, and therefore decision makers, in this case the planning committee, need to weigh the public benefits against the harm, and that's what's out in paragraph 196 of the NPPF. And as members will know, personal benefits of an applicant are normally given very, very limited weight when taking into account public benefits. So if members are looking to go against the officer's recommendation, they need to think about what public benefits directly overcome the harm to the listed building. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, hard to see what the public benefit would be, but I'm sure somebody may come up with one. Ms Dungate, were you going to show us something from highways? And Mr Lee, you were going to answer whether it will require a new application to mitigate the highways issue.
Sorry, have you got the car parking one? Sorry, Ms Dungate, so I wasn't clear. I knew what I meant. Yep, that's it. As you can see, members, from the plan, the proposal is for 2 separate tandem car parking spaces in front of the property. There is no physical way that I can see that there's capable of overcoming the conflict with the highways. It solely is a case of, as you can see here, a vehicle would have to reverse straight back after coming on, and as explained, this is tandem. So if you were the front car at the front and you needed to move that, you'd have to reverse the first car off before reversing that one off to then put it back on. So I can't see any way professionally that we can overcome that through a condition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stamp.
Thank you, Chair. I actually agree with a lot of what Councillor Channer said and Councillor Hull. I also listened to the applicant when he said about them reversing into the parking spaces. If you go through Steeple, is it a 40-mile-an-hour limit on that section of the road, or is it 60? Can somebody help me?
It'll be 30.
Well, no disrespect. I mean, we are dealing with cars. People living houses have cars. We're not gone to electric scooters or anything yet. I actually do have a great deal of sympathy with the applicant on here, and also with the parish council. They've made very good points, and I've actually been approached and said there are no smaller properties in Steeple, Wendy. All our people, our youngsters are moving out. There's nothing like that here. So the parish council's also identified, which is what Councillor Hall's just said. My main issue is, and the only thing that I have got an issue with, is highways. And what Councillor Chan has said, we would be absolutely, we'd have to be very careful if we chose to overturn the officer's recommendation when highways have commented, even though I have a huge amount of sympathy, and I actually don't mind the house at all. I walked along that road myself the other day, and I thought it was, and I checked it out just as I was popping out, having a little scoot around the district, and I didn't see an issue. And it is back on near the bungalows. Yeah, I have a lot of sympathy, Mr. Chairman, about this one for the applicant, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Stamp. Had a mental block there. It's obviously been the end of a long day. Councillor Channer, you want to come back? If you could keep it brief, please. Thank you.
Well, I'll do my best, Chairman. You know I do like to say a bit sometimes.
You do, you do. It's
yeah. But there we go, just to get your points over, because it's important, isn't it, when we're dealing with people's applications?
It is indeed.
You know, we should be heard as the ward member and making representation for our people and our parish councils. So yes, I have great sympathy with the parish council, and yes, it's true. I know the views of the parish. They do want some properties, 2 bedrooms, as we do as a council. We want to have mixed properties. And regarding, and thank you for reading out the response, because it was clear then about the conservation with the word object. I sort of misinterpreted a bit that paragraph. However, for me, I think the public benefit is actually getting a 2-bed property and, you know, another building into the village that could be utilised for younger people or the older persons. If those presently in Hipseys move into that, then that becomes available. And like Councillor Stample, I hope I made it sort of in my initial speech. The real big issue is, I'm afraid, the highways. And I'm sorry, but I can't give anything to override that, because it's very rare they do come up with an issue where they are against a development. It's quite clear that they are, and I think it would be irresponsible of myself if I was not to take that into the consideration. So it's on that I'm afraid I can't support the application.
Thank you very much.
But I thank Mr. Lee for his very clear explanation now of this sustainability and development boundary issue, because that's made that a bit clearer as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell.
Thank you. I just wondered if officers could clarify for me how many bedrooms Hipseys Cottage has, please. Do we know?
Yes, through you, Chair, it's also 2 bedrooms.
It is, so it would be right. So it would, for either way, it would free up a property. Okay, thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Councillor Bassinger.
Thank you. There we are. Yeah, I would just like to say that I concur with Councillor Channer and Councillor Stamp. Really, I have great sympathy for the people of Steeple, and I would support this. But unfortunately, you know, highways, I've never known them to make a comment on the whole time I've been here, and I think if they do, I just don't know where we would stand, and unfortunately I'm going to have to refuse this on that basis, but that basis alone, I'm afraid.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bassinger. I'm now going to move a recommendation that this is refused for the reasons detailed in section B of the report, as it says. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Bell.
Thank you. I'm going to ask, first of all, if this is something that we can vote by assent, or do we have any dissent? Before I go any further, is there anybody who wouldn't agree to agree that by assent? I'm there. Okay, then therefore asking if you agree by assent.
Agreed. Reluctantly agreed.
Okay, therefore it is regrettably refused because of the highways concern.
I think Councillor Hall's trying to get in, Chairman. I think Councillor Hall's trying to get in.
Councillor Hull, are you asking to speak?
No, I was just saying it is about the highways, because if they can do anything or come back, if they can change the car, so the cars can be turned around.
Yes, they have a chance.
We'd be in agreement with it.
Yeah, you can always reapply with a solution.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. So we're now going on to item 7. Any other items of business that the chair decides are urgent, and I have none. So I therefore am on to item 8, closure of the meeting. I thank you for all your contributions. I now draw the meeting to a close at 19:18 or 7:18 in English. As the meeting is now closed, members are advised not to enter into any further discussion on this forum and to please leave the meeting promptly. And thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.